how can a company making hundreds of millions in profit on paper just completely run out of money and die overnight?
It sounds impossible, right? Like, how does that even happen?
Exactly. Well, welcome to the deep dive. You might notice the backdrop for today's conversation has changed a bit.
Yeah, I was looking at that. It's quite the setup.
Right. Instead of our usual background, we're looking at this chaotic, shifting stock ticker, like red numbers, green numbers, scrolling endlessly.
It's very dramatic.
It is. And it's meant to represent today's theme, which is the financial lifeblood of a business.
Which is a mesmerizing visual, I mean, obviously. But it's also a really dangerous one, honestly.
Wait, dangerous. How so?
Well, because when you look at a stock ticker or, even the top line of an income statement, you just naturally assume you're looking at the true pulse of a company.
Right, you think you're seeing the real health of the business.
Exactly. But the reality is that pulse can be a complete, utter fabrication.
And today, we have a massive stack of sources in front of us to prove exactly that point. We're pulling from academic financial guides, historical case studies.
We've got corporate treasury handbooks in here, too.
Yeah, and legal analyses. So our mission for this deep dive is to uncover the ultimate hidden truth of business survival. We're going to answer the seemingly impossible paradox.
The paradox of how a business can look like a roaring success to all its investors, yet be, totally bankrupt in reality.
That sounds like a riddle.
It does, but it's a trap that destroys businesses every single day. And to understand how it happens, we really have to start by, completely dismantling what most people think they know about making money.
Okay, to set the stage for you, the listener, there's this incredible quote that went around a Facebook group. The group is called Accounting Knowledge Concepts.
Right, I remember you showing me that.
Yeah, it's adapted from the economist Alfred Rappaport, and it goes like this. Cash is fact, profit is opinion, accounting reveals both.
Such a great quote.
And someone actually replied to that post with a brilliant comment referencing the conservatism principle in finance, which essentially tells accountants to anticipate no profits, but provide for all losses.
Yeah, that quote, the profit is opinion part, is honestly the absolute cornerstone of financial analysis.
It sounds almost controversial, though, doesn't it? To a casual investor who just looks at quarterly earnings reports.
Oh, totally. It sounds crazy, but it is the absolute key to spotting a failing company way before the market does.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why on earth is profit just an opinion? Like, I have $1 or I don't.
Well, to understand how a company can literally die while showing a massive profit, we really need to dig into the fundamental difference between net income and cash flow.
Right, and net income is based on the rules of accrual accounting, right?
Exactly. Net income is accrual accounting. Cash flow is the actual physical movement of dollars and cents.
So the confusion is really all about accrual accounting rules.
Yeah, it stems entirely from that. Because under the accrual system, a company records revenue when a product is delivered or a service is performed. They record it when it is earned, not when the cash is actually received.
Got it. And on the flip side?
On the flip side, expenses are recorded when they are incurred, not when the company actually, cuts the check to pay for them.
Okay, I want to make sure we're translating this into the real world for the listener.
Yeah.
Is this essentially like throwing a massive, lavish wedding on a credit card?
Oh, I like that. Go on.
Okay, so let's say you throw a $100,000 party. You look incredibly wealthy to all your guests.
Yep.
And you're accepting all these generous wedding gifts. So those are your revenues. On paper, you are rich today.
Right, your net income looks fantastic.
Exactly. But if those gifts are in the form of checks that haven't cleared yet,
Yeah.
and the catering company is demanding a wire transfer right now to release the food, well, you're functionally broke.
Yeah, you are.
Your profit might look great once everything settles, but your cash flow today is zero. The wedding is getting canceled.
That is a much better way to think about it than, just staring at a sterile spreadsheet. You are highly profitable in theory, but you are completely illiquid in reality.
Right.
And when financial analysts try to reconcile this illusion with reality, they use something called the indirect method.
The indirect method to calculate operating cash flow, right?
Exactly. They start with that opinion, the net income number, at the very bottom of the income statement. And from there, they have to strip away all the accounting fiction.
And then the most famous piece of accounting fiction is depreciation, right?
Precisely. It's a perfect example. Say a company buys $1 million piece of factory equipment. The tax rules allow them to spread that cost out over, say, 10 years.
Okay, so every year they deduct $100,000 from their profit as depreciation,
Right. It lowers their net income, which, lowers their taxes. But here's the critical part. They didn't actually write a check to anyone for $100,000 this year.
Because they paid for it years ago.
Exactly. No cash left the building today. So to find the real cash flow, analysts take the net income and add that depreciation right back in.
Okay, but then you have to adjust for the actual movement of working capital, which is where things get really dangerous.
Yeah. Working capital is the killer.
Like, if your accounts receivable went up over the quarter, meaning more of your customers owe you money, you actually have to subtract that increase from your net income.
Because you already recorded those sales as revenue to boost your profit, but you cannot pay your employees with an IOU from a customer.
Right. You don't have the cash yet.
Exactly. And conversely, if your accounts payable went up, meaning you are intentionally holding off on paying your own suppliers, you add that money back to your cash flow.
Wait, really? You add it back?
Yeah. Why? Because you still have those funds sitting in your own bank account. You haven't paid the bill yet.
Wow, okay. The Center for Entrepreneurship, Education, and Development, or SEED, they published a fascinating piece on this. They outline exactly how companies fall into this profitable bankruptcy trap.
It's a great article.
It usually comes down to a lethal combination of two things. First, making massive sales on credit, so your cash is severely delayed.
Right.
And second, having really high fixed costs, like massive commercial leases or heavy debt payments that completely overwhelm your gross profits.
Yeah, and a massive disconnect between net income and cash flow is really the loudest warning siren in business.
Because it means what exactly?
It means the company is suffering from delayed customer payments or maybe a massive buildup of inventory that's just sitting in warehouses gathering dust. Or, and this is a big one, they are using aggressive revenue recognition.
Like booking multi-year contracts all at once just to make their quarterly profit look good.
Exactly. They're betting that future earnings will somehow cover today's debt. Or, they might get hit with an unexpected legal fine and have absolutely zero actual cash reserves to pay it.
Which forces them into immediate bankruptcy.
Right. Which brings us to the moment where the illusion finally breaks.
Yeah. Since accrual accounting can hide the truth of a company's health for so long, what does it look like when the bottom finally falls out?
Well, we actually have a historical disaster in our sources that shows exactly how we can measure this movement of cash, or I should say the lack of it.
Yes. The quintessential case study here comes from the CFA Institute, and they analyzed the catastrophic bankruptcy of the W.T. Grant Company.
Oh, W.T. Grant. It is considered a legendary cautionary tale among financial analysts.
So according to the study, W.T. Grant was this massive retailer, and their profitability and liquidity metrics were trending slowly downward for 10 years.
A decade-long slow bleed.
But the most shocking detail in the entire report, for a full decade before they finally collapsed, W.T. Grant generated absolutely no cash internally.
None. Not a single dollar of positive cash flow from their actual retail operations for 10 whole years.
How is that even physically possible? Like, how do you keep the lights on across hundreds of stores and pay thousands of employees and keep inventory on the shelves for a decade if your core business is bleeding cash every single day?
By aggressively masking the rot with debt.
Debt, of course.
Yeah. They kept expanding their own credit programs, basically begging customers to buy items on store credit just to keep their sales volume looking high on the income statement.
Just to keep that profit opinion looking good.
Exactly. And since customers weren't paying cash, W.T. Grant had to constantly go to banks to take out short-term loans just to fund their day-to-day operations.
So they were borrowing millions just to cover the fact that their own customers weren't paying them.
Right. And the terrifying part is that the traditional ratio analysis, like the basic metrics that your casual retail investor looks at, wouldn't have shown the impending doom until about 1970 or 1971.
Wow. But if anyone had just looked at the cash flow statement, the writing was carved into the wall a full decade earlier.
A decade. And yet, in 1973, W.T. Grant's stock was still selling at nearly 20 times earnings.
That is insane. Investors completely ignored the cash flow deficit.
They were completely hypnotized by the steady earnings per share. They bought the opinion and completely ignored the facts.
So to prevent you, the listener, from falling into that kind of blindness with your own investments, or even at your own company, financial analysts rely on a specific metric.
Right, to track the actual timeline of money.
Yeah, it's called the cash conversion cycle, or the CCC.
The CCC. It measures the exact number of days it takes for a company to buy raw inventory, sell it to a customer, and actually collect the cash in their bank account.
The formula for it really reveals the entire operational heartbeat of a business, doesn't it?
It really does. It starts with days inventory outstanding, so how long a product just gathers dust on your shelves.
Okay, so you start with that.
Then you add days sales outstanding, which is how many days it takes your customers to finally pay your invoice.
Right.
And then crucially, you subtract days payable outstanding.
Which is how many days you can stall before paying your own suppliers.
Exactly. And the golden rule of corporate finance is that a lower cash conversion cycle is always better. You want to cycle that cash through the system as fast as physically possible.
So the positive levers a company can pull are decreasing inventory days by selling products faster,
Yep.
decreasing sales outstanding by forcing customers to pay up quicker,
Right.
and increasing payable days by pushing out your own payments to suppliers.
And that last lever is where modern corporate finance gets incredibly aggressive.
Okay, wait, let me push back on that.
Hmm.
Why is taking longer to pay your bills considered a positive lever? Like if I hire a graphic designer for my business and I make them wait 90 days to get paid, doesn't that just make me a toxic business partner?
Well, yes, it does make you a difficult partner.
Right. I'm effectively squeezing a smaller vendor just to make my own spreadsheets look better.
You are. But it speaks to the ruthless nature of buyer power. If you are a massive multi-billion-dollar global retailer, your suppliers need shelf space in your stores much more than you need their specific product.
Oh, I see. So the big guy dictates the terms.
Exactly. The massive retailer tells the supplier, we will pay you in 60 days or maybe even 120 days.
Wow. 120 days.
Yeah? And as the smaller supplier waits desperately for their money, the retail giant gets to use that cash to fund their own operations, invest in new projects, or, just earn interest on it overnight.
So it is essentially an interest-free loan forcefully extracted from your own supply chain.
That's exactly what it is.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If the cash conversion cycle measures the timeline of cash and a lower number is the goal,
Yeah.
what happens if a company hacks this timeline so aggressively that their cycle goes below zero?
Then you get Amazon.
Amazon. Amazon is a textbook example of mastering a negative cash conversion cycle.
It's brilliant, honestly. They turned over their inventory and collected customer credit card payments so incredibly fast that their CCC literally went negative.
So think about it. You click Buy Now on Amazon, and they charge your card instantly. But they negotiated terms with the book publisher or the electronics manufacturer that say Amazon doesn't have to pay them for 60 or 90 days.
Right. Amazon was collecting cash from millions of consumers globally before they ever had to pay the vendors who actually made the products.
That's wild.
It is. Because of those delayed payment terms, Amazon was able to fund its massive, unprecedented, global growth-like building data centers for AWS, expanding warehouses completely interest-free.
Because they weren't borrowing money from banks.
No. They were generating an endless pool of float from their own supply chain leg.
It's a staggering strategic advantage. But contrast that absolute mastery of cash with another concept from our sources, the burn rate.
Oh, the burn rate. We saw this destroy companies during the dot-com era.
Right. And the burn rate is exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah.
It is the velocity at which a company consumes its shareholder capital before it generates any positive cash flow.
It is pure negative cash flow.
And during the dot-com boom of the late 90s, unsound management teams actually flaunted high burn rates, didn't they?
Yeah, they treated massive cash burn as a proxy for customer acquisition. The twisted logic was basically, the faster we are burning through our venture capital, the faster we are capturing market share.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
And we all know how the dot-com bust ended. Hundreds of companies vaporized overnight because they just ran out of other people's money.
Exactly.
It's funny, the Wikipedia source notes that burn rate is also used in project management to flag scope creep, which makes total sense for anyone managing a team today.
Oh, yeah. If your department is burning through its annual budget faster than the project timeline dictates, you aren't growing. You're losing control of the project.
Exactly. So to avoid burning out or losing control, major global companies rely on a specific group of people, corporate treasurers.
Right. The Association of Corporate Treasurers outlines exactly how these professionals manage short-term liquidity risk.
And liquidity risk is simply the terrifying possibility that the company will fail to make its required payments over the next 12 months.
Right. And to prevent this, treasurers live and breathe rolling 1 to 3 month cash flow forecasts.
But they don't just look at a static spreadsheet,
Yeah.
right? They run exhaustive scenario analysis and sensitivity analysis, and there's a really crucial difference between the two.
Yeah, there is. Scenario analysis is event-driven, so a treasurer will ask, what if our primary commercial bank suddenly collapses?
Or what if foreign exchange rates swing wildly by 20%?
Exactly. Or what if the price of oil jumps 50% overnight? They are modeling massive macroeconomic shocks.
While sensitivity analysis is much more about stress testing the everyday operational variables.
Right. A treasurer adjusts the inputs to see what breaks. What if our average customer starts paying us 5 days later than usual?
Or what if our suppliers demand payment 10 days earlier?
Yes. It shows them exactly how fragile their cash conversion cycle really is.
And when these risks are identified, the Association of Corporate Treasurers outlines 4 specific ways a company can respond. They can avoid the risk, retain it, reduce it, or transfer it.
And transferring it usually means negotiating committed revolving credit facilities from a massive bank. It's essentially a giant emergency credit card they can draw on if cash dries up.
There's a great practical example in the text about a hypothetical multinational corporation called Smooth Operator Pack.
Oh, yeah. Smooth Operator Pack categorizes its global subsidiaries into 3 tiers to manage cash access and prevent any single division from going bankrupt.
Okay, so Category A subsidiaries. They're allowed to participate in something called cash pooling.
Right.
Let's pause there because cash pooling sounds like total corporate jargon. What does that actually mean mechanically?
Mechanically, it uses zero balance accounts. So imagine a company has dozens of accounts across Europe. At the end of every single business day, the bank automatically sweeps all the positive cash balances from the subsidiary accounts
Sweeps them where?
into one massive central master account controlled by the corporate treasury.
Wow. Why go through the hassle of sweeping the funds every single night, though?
Because you never want idle cash sitting in a bank account in Madrid earning zero interest while your headquarters in London is simultaneously borrowing money at a 5% interest rate just to make payroll.
Oh, that makes total sense. Cash pooling consolidates everything so the company can use its own money to fund itself, minimizing external borrowing.
Exactly. Then the text mentions Category B subsidiaries. These are located in countries where banking regulations make daily cash pooling impossible.
So what do?
The Treasury funds them via internal intergroup loans. The parent company essentially acts as the bank for its own subsidiary.
Okay, got it. And finally, Category C subsidiaries. The text says these are the most dangerous.
Yeah, they are. These are operations located in countries with strict foreign exchange controls. The local government heavily restricts moving money across borders.
So a multinational can't just wire funds in and out freely.
No, they can't. These divisions require rigorous annual capital reviews. The Treasury has to plan a full year in advance just to figure out how to inject liquidity or extract profits legally.
Wow. So the ultimate takeaway here is that a corporate treasurer's job isn't to pretend that liquidity risk doesn't exist. You cannot just hope the financial markets will always be willing to lend you money when you run dry.
No, you definitely can't. They rely on robust internal controls, cash concentration, and rigorous scenario planning because they know cash is the absolute only truth.
But here's the most practical question for you, the listener. What if you aren't Amazon? What if you don't have access to the internal dashboards of a massive corporate treasury team?
Right. How do you see it coming?
Exactly. If internal cash forecasts start failing, how do outside observers spot a company that's circling the drain?
Well, that brings us to the legal and restructuring side of the deep dive. The law firm Stevens & Bolton published a brilliant breakdown of the 5 early warning signs of insolvency. These are the public cracks in the facade.
I look at these 5 signs, kind of like the warning lights on your car's dashboard. Like if your tire pressure light flickers on, maybe it's just a sensor glitch or a cold morning, you get it checked out, but you don't panic.
Sure.
But if the check engine light, the low oil light, and the battery light all illuminate in glaring red at the exact same time, you pull over immediately because your engine is about to explode.
That is the perfect framework for this. So the first warning light is a sudden string of profit warnings. Public companies have to tell investors if their earnings are going to miss expectations.
Right.
And we've seen a surge of these recently. For example, Direct Line Insurance issued 3 profit warnings in a very short span.
But wait, companies have bad quarters all the time. Supply chains get snarled, Consumer trends shift. Direct Line got hit by inflation, driving up car repair costs, and that was compounded by a sudden cold snap that caused a massive spike in weather-related claims.
True.
So what turns a bad quarter into a terminal panic?
A bad quarter turns into a panic when it triggers warning light number 2, late filing of accounts.
Why is missing a paperwork deadline such a massive red flag?
Because it rarely means the accountants were just lazy. It almost always means the company's directors are actively fighting with their independent auditors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The auditors have to sign a document stating they believe the business is a going concern, meaning it has enough cash to survive the next 12 months. If the internal cash forecast is too bleak, the auditors refuse to sign.
And the accounts get delayed.
Exactly. And the second the market realizes the auditors are withholding their signature, it triggers automatic covenant breaches with the banks. Lenders freeze credit lines, and suppliers instantly start demanding cash up front. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Which naturally leads to warning light number 3, management changes. Specifically, high staff turnover at the executive level.
Yeah, people start jumping ship.
Right. When the chief financial officer or the CEO suddenly resigns to, spend more time with their family right after a profit warning and a delayed earnings report, you should be terrified. The people who know the most about the internal cash flow are rushing for the lifeboats.
It's never a good sign.
Hmm.
Warning light number 4 looks at the broader environment, operating in a contracting market. The sources point specifically to the retail and aviation sectors.
Like brands like Jules and Paperchase falling into administration, or the airline Flybe collapsing for a second time.
Right.
Why are those specific sectors so vulnerable, though? Why do they shatter instantly in a contracting market while, say, software companies might just lay off some staff and survive?
It comes back to fixed costs versus cash flow. Airlines and brick-and-mortar retailers have massive, unchangeable fixed costs.
Right, the multi-year leases on prime storefronts.
Exactly. Or billion-dollar loans on commercial aircraft. When consumer spending shrinks in a recession, their revenue plummets instantly. But those lease payments and debt obligations do not shrink a single inch.
So the cash just burns up in a matter of months.
Yep. Now, big players like Next and Tesco swooped in to buy the pieces of Jules and Paperchase for pennies on the dollar, but the original equity holders were completely wiped out.
Which leaves the final and perhaps most terminal warning light on the dashboard: late payments and the desperate search for alternative finance.
This is where the internal cash crunch violently spills out into the public square.
Right. A company might suddenly have its bank accounts frozen because a furious supplier filed a winding up petition in court.
Or worse, they resort to incredibly complex, deceptive financial engineering just to hide their lack of cash. The classic example in our sources is the collapse of the UK construction giant Carillion.
Yeah, the sources mentioned Carillion hid 500 million pounds in liabilities using something called reverse factoring or invoice discounting.
Right.
We really need to explain how this actually works because it sounds like a magic trick. How do you hide £500 million of debt?
Well, reverse factoring is a masterclass in accounting illusion. Imagine Carillion owes a supplier £10 million for construction materials.
Okay, simple enough.
But Carillion doesn't have the cash. Instead of officially taking out a bank loan, which would alert investors that Carillion is drowning in debt, they broker a deal between their supplier and their bank.
A deal how?
The bank pays the supplier the £10 million today. So now Carillion owes the bank the £10 million plus a fee.
That's a loan.
It is a loan. But because of a loophole in accounting rules, Carillion doesn't classify this as bank debt on their balance sheet. They classify it as accounts payable, as if it were just a standard routine operational expense.
Wow.
Yeah.
So investors look at the balance sheet and think, oh, they just have normal supplier invoices to pay, completely unaware that Carillion is secretly relying on banks to float their entire supply chain.
Exactly. And the moment the banks realized how deep the rot went and refused to process any more reverse factoring, the music stopped. Carillion liquidated in 2018, taking thousands of jobs and suppliers down with them.
That is brutal.
When you see a company suddenly utilizing these complex supply chain finance schemes, you are watching the exact moment when the opinion of profit violently collides with the fact of cash. The illusion shatters.
It is a brutal reality check.
Yeah.
We've covered incredible ground today. We started by dismantling the illusion of accrual accounting, showing how you can be highly profitable on paper, but completely broke in reality.
Yep, the wedding on a credit card.
Exactly. We looked at W.T. Grant surviving for a decade on debt to hide their zero cash flow, and Amazon's absolute mastery of the negative cash conversion cycle. And finally, we decoded the 5 stark dashboard warning lights of a company running out of its lifeblood, from auditor panic to the deception of reverse factoring.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. So what does this all mean for you? Ultimately, it means that cash truly is king. Looking only at the bottom line, the net income is a recipe for disaster. You have to follow the actual money.
I do want to leave you with a broader thought to mull over, though, something that ripples out from everything we've discussed today. Yeah. We talked extensively about the cash conversion cycle and how a massive corporation extending its days payable outstanding delaying payments to smaller suppliers for 90 or 120 days is considered a strategic triumph for their own liquidity.
Right, the Amazon model.
But consider the macroeconomic impact of that strategy.
Yeah.
If every single massive, successful company optimizes its cash flow by squeezing its vendors, aren't they just pushing the entire burden of liquidity risk down the supply chain?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If the biggest players hoard their cash at the expense of their smaller partners, it creates an incredibly fragile economic ecosystem.
Because the smaller guys don't have massive cash reserves.
Exactly. In that environment, one major disruption, like a shipping crisis or a sudden spike in interest rates, could trigger a catastrophic domino effect of bankruptcies among the smaller suppliers who simply ran out of breath waiting to be paid.
That is a terrifying thought.
It really invites us to ask,
Mm.
in the relentless pursuit of the perfect corporate balance sheet, who is actually bearing the hidden cost of those optimized numbers?
A fragile ecosystem indeed. The next time you see a company boasting about record profits, remember that scrolling stock ticker. Look a little closer. Look for the cash. Because as we learned today, profit is just an opinion, but cash is a very cold, a very hard fact.